It was late 2008. I moved into an apartment in Brooklyn, New York. It wasn't a brand new or luxurious place. Just a small apartment in an old, quiet building. I lived alone, liking the privacy and the comfortable feeling of having my own space. The apartment was quite cozy, and I quickly felt at home. My bed was the place where I felt safest, where I ended a long day. It was a simple bed, wooden frame, not too high off the floor, but still had enough space underneath to store a few old boxes or simply gather dust. The first few nights passed peacefully, but then, I started hearing strange noises at night, when everything was completely silent. The sound was very small, very faint, like fingernails lightly scratching on wood or on the floor. The sound echoed from under my bed. Initially, I told myself it was just the sound of the old building. The pipes, or the wind blowing through a crack in the window creating an auditory illusion. I tried to ignore it, buried my face in my pillow, closed my eyes, and tried to sleep, but the scratching sound kept appearing. Irregularly, sometimes just one scratch, sometimes several consecutive ones, as if something was probing or trying to move quietly underneath. An uneasy feeling began to creep in. Along with the scratching sound, I felt a coldness radiating from beneath the bed. A coldness unlike the room temperature but abiding. Damp cold, like earth vapor rising. And accompanying that coldness was the feeling of being watched. A chilling sensation that something was lying right beneath me, staring up. One night, when the scratching and the feeling of being watched became too clear, I couldn't bear it anymore. I turned on the bedside lamp, sat up on the bed, my heart pounding. I gathered all my courage, bent down to look into the dark space under the bed. The light from the bedside lamp only illuminated a small part. I only saw dust motes floating in the air and emptiness. There was nothing there. I breathed a sigh of relief, laughing at my own irrational fear. Maybe I was just too stressed or tired. I turned off the light, lay down, trying to sleep, but as soon as the light was off and darkness returned, the scratching sound started again. Faintly, from under the bed, and this time, it was accompanied by another sound. A much more terrifying sound, shallow breathing. That shallow, ragged breathing, and very close, shattered all my attempts at rationalization. It was clearly the sound of a living creature, struggling for air, or trying to breathe quietly. The breathing came from right beneath me, under the mattress and sheets. The following nights were hell. I lay in bed, rigid, trying not to move, listening to those two horrifying sounds. The gentle scratching and the steady shallow breathing. They usually started right after I turned off the light, as if that thing was waiting. The feeling of being watched became more intense. I felt as if invisible eyes were peering through the bed frame, staring straight at me in the darkness. I began to suffer from severe sleep deprivation. My face was pale, my eyes dark-rimmed. During the day, I tried to appear normal, went to work, met people, but in my mind, I was always thinking about the terrifying darkness under the bed. I felt extreme anxiety whenever I thought about having to go back to the apartment and face the night. I tried various things. I placed heavy objects around the base of the bed to feel more secure. I sprinkled salt around the bed, because I heard salt could ward off spirits. I even tried sleeping on the sofa for a few nights. But the feeling of being watched and the shallow breathing seemed to follow me. Just a little further away, echoing from the bedroom, self-doubt began to creep in. Was I going crazy? Was this a side effect of stress or loneliness? I tried talking to a close friend about what was happening. She listened patiently, but her eyes were full of worry. And eventually she just advised me to see a doctor and try to get more rest. I knew she didn't believe me, and that made me feel even more isolated with my fear. During the day, I didn't hear any noise from under the bed. Everything was completely normal. But as soon as night fell and I lay down on the bed, they would start again. The scratching, the shallow breathing, and the deadly coldness. The haunting was no longer confined strictly to under the bed. It began to spread to other areas of the apartment, but always with some connection to the bedroom or myself. I started hearing other sounds at night. Soft footsteps in the hallway leading to the bedroom. Very light, as if someone was trying to move without making noise. The bedroom door creaking open, then closing. Rustling sounds in the closet, located right next to my bed. The dark shadow I fleetingly saw under the bed also began to appear elsewhere. While sitting in the living room in the evening, I caught a glimpse of a thick, shapeless dark shadow, gliding quickly across the doorway of the bedroom. It didn't look like my shadow or furniture shadows. It was darker, denser, and moved with an unnatural speed. That shadow seemed to always lurk at the edge of my vision, in dark corners, and always felt like it was moving closer to the bedroom. The feeling of being watched was now not just from under the bed but from everywhere in the apartment. I felt like there were multiple things in the apartment with me in the darkness, all directed towards the bedroom. Objects in the bedroom were sometimes moved inexplicably. My indoor slippers were sometimes found neatly placed under the edge of the bed, even though I was sure I had left them elsewhere. The book I was reading on the nightstand would sometimes fall to the floor in the middle of the night, for no apparent reason. The combination of sleep deprivation, nervous tension, and these strange phenomena left me on the verge of collapse. I was afraid of my apartment, afraid of my bedroom, and most afraid of that dark shadow. The thing hiding right under my bed and seemingly, gradually, step by step, finding a way to get to me. I didn't dare to look under the bed anymore. The thought of something lying there, breathing raggedly in the darkness, only a few dozen centimeters away from me, was enough to send shivers of terror down my spine. The haunting no longer stopped at scaring me or moving objects. It began to leave physical traces. Horrifying proof that this thing was real and capable of interacting with the physical world. I started seeing scratch marks on the wooden floor around the bed. They weren't ordinary scratches caused by furniture. They were short, sharp marks, looking as if made by claws or something similar. These scratches were most concentrated in the area right at the edge of the bed, and some were slightly dug into the wood. Seeing them immediately reminded me of the first scratching sound I heard under the bed. Along with the scratches, an unpleasant smell began to appear more frequently. A musty, damp smell mixed with a fishy, indescribable odor, like rotting meat or something decaying underground. This smell was often strongest in the bedroom, especially near the bed area, making me feel nauseous. The dark shadow also became bolder. I no longer just saw it flit by. One night, while lying in bed, I looked towards the far end of the room, where there was a dark corner. I saw that dark shadow standing there, tall, dense, like a hole in the air. Then, slowly, it turned towards me. I didn't see eyes or a mouth, just the shape of a head, and something resembling shoulders and arms. It stood there, staring at me in the darkness, and I could feel the coldness and hatred radiating from it. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I needed to find out what was haunting me and why it was me. I started searching for information about this apartment and this building. I asked the building manager about previous tenants or unusual incidents that had happened, but he was dismissive. saying the building was old and strange noises were normal sometimes. I went online, searching for old news articles about the building address or street, looking for past tenants, deaths, crimes, fictionalized sources, and then I found some old information. Not very official, just a snippet in an online forum about crime history in Brooklyn. There was a vaguely mentioned story about a disappearance that happened in this building about 15 years ago. In the 1990s, a young woman living alone had suddenly vanished. And although the police searched, she was never found. Rumor had it that her ex-boyfriend, a violent man, might have killed her and hidden the body in the apartment. But there was no proof. That apartment was my apartment. Finding information about the old disappearance, about the possibility of an unsolved murder right in my own apartment, was like a spark igniting the horror. The entity seemed to know I had been researching it. That night, the disturbances reached their most violent peak. The foul smell of decay was overwhelming throughout the apartment, especially in the bedroom. The scratching under the bed was no longer gentle. It became fierce, frantic, as if something was trying to break through the floorboards or the bed itself to get out. I heard low, guttural growls, full of rage, echoing from below, accompanied by the shallow breathing now sounding like choking. Desperate struggling, my bed began to shake violently, as if something was pushing hard from underneath. Objects on the nightstand were thrown to the floor with a clatter. Then, from the space under the bed, the dark shadow began to emerge. It wasn't gliding anymore. It moved slowly, deliberately, reaching out beyond the edge of the bed. I saw the shape of a head, a shoulder, then a haunting arm, all a solid mass of black, as if made of pure shadow. That shadow reached out, its long, sharp fingers, looking like claws, trying to grasp the bed legs or the bed frame. This was accompanied by a moan, a lament, full of pain and anger. I understood now. This thing, the shadow under the bed, was perhaps the spirit of the woman who had disappeared, murdered and possibly hidden right here, under the floor, or under this very bed. The pain, the anger, and the isolation of death had turned her into this, a trapped entity, haunting the very place she had died so tragically. What did it want? Did it want me to experience its fear? Did it want to drag me down with it? Did it want me to find its body? I didn't know, but I knew it was targeting me. The one sleeping right on top of its grave. I screamed, desperate, trying to hold myself on the bed while the bed shook violently. I felt the deadly cold radiating from that dark shadow. And the scratching, the breathing, the growls echoed in my ears. Somehow, in my absolute panic and the struggle, I managed to roll off the bed, falling onto the floor on the opposite side, hitting the ground hard. The dark shadow under the bed was still there. It couldn't fully emerge, as if held back by some invisible barrier, perhaps the bed itself or the room. I heard angry growls, frantic scratching from below as I scrambled up and ran out of the bedroom. Ran out of that apartment building that night, taking nothing with me. I never went back to that apartment again. I left everything behind. The feeling of something lying under the bed, waiting in the darkness, was too horrifying to ever face again. I moved far away, trying to forget everything, but I couldn't. The haunting had taken deep root in my mind. I developed an extreme fear of being alone at night. I am afraid of dark rooms, afraid of cramped spaces, and most afraid of beds with space underneath. Whenever I lie on a new bed, no matter where it is, I still feel that familiar creepy sensation. I still imagine the faint scratching, the shallow breathing from underneath. Sometimes, in the darkness, I catch a glimpse of the dark shadow flitting across the corner of the room. Or feel a sudden coldness radiating from the floor near the bed. I know that the shadow under the bed was not a product of my imagination. It was real. It is something trapped in its own tragedy. Bound to the place it died. That apartment in Brooklyn. It is probably still being rented out to new people. People who have no idea about the horrifying secret lying right beneath where they lay their heads to sleep every night. This story is true. It is what I experienced. It stole the peace from my sleep forever. If the story of the shadow under the bed sent chills down your spine. If you believe in true horror, places haunted by death, and trapped spirits waiting in the darkness, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next videos. There are many other horrifying secrets lurking right within our most familiar places.